Welcome to this edition of Journals of Spiritual Discovery, brought to you by spiritualteachers.org. I'm your host, Sean Nevins. Hello and welcome to this edition of Journals of Spiritual Discovery. So my guest this month is Pat the Barber Crowley. And I just wanted to mention that Pat was recommended to me by a listener, so I really do appreciate that. And please, if you have suggestions for people that you think would be interesting to have on the podcast, let me know. You can go to spiritualteachers.org and you'll find a contact form there. I'm always interested in your suggestions. I get a few each month. Send them. And if you can provide contact info for the person, that's really helpful, because sometimes it is difficult to get in touch with people, especially those of you who tell me that you want me to interview Jed McKenna. That's been a little bit challenging. My only other recommendation is to try to listen to this month's podcast, this interview, in a quiet place if you can. One is because the audio is a little bit low on Pat's side. We did it via Zoom, so the connection wasn't all that great. But yeah, you might want to be in a quiet spot. But also because Pat's a really gifted storyteller, and I think that a lot of the feeling of what he's trying to communicate does come through in his words. And if you can really give your attention to this interview, I think that will be helpful for just picking up or tuning in to what he's trying to pass. So with that, I'll leave you with this interview. One other thing, if you want Pat's contact info, we do talk about that during the interview, and I did get that put up on the website. So go to the website, spiritualteachers.org. You'll see a link to the podcast, and you can find this episode there, and you can reach out to Pat if you want to follow up on any of the ideas, you got questions for him, and so forth. So thanks again. It's almost Thanksgiving here in the U.S., so I hope to get one more episode out this year, right before Christmas, and at that point, I will sort of wrap up the year and give you a preview of what's coming next year. Thanks to all of you, and wishing you the best. Bye. All right, great. Well, thanks for joining me today, Pat. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule.
Okay, Sean, you're welcome. Thank you.
And I'm in California right now. I was just curious what part of the world you're in.
At this moment, I'm in Spain.
Great.
Yeah. But my home is the southwest coast of Ireland.
Okay.
Right out on the edge of the Atlantic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We say down there that the next parish to us is America. Yeah.
And are you in Spain for pleasure, or are you?
No, just for pleasure, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I hope that the coronavirus and the lockdown and all that is not interfering too much.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, here, not really. It's obligatory to wear masks and things like that, but really it's pretty relaxed here in the south of Spain at the moment.
Okay, good. Well, I didn't, frankly, I didn't know a whole lot about you before we scheduled this interview. A friend of mine, Liam, suggested that we get together, and I know that we had briefly talked about that perhaps a year ago, and we just didn't connect. So I'm glad to finally be here with you. I did check out a few of the videos that you have on your webpage, and I will link to those in the show notes for this episode. One of the things that caught my attention on there was that you said something to the effect of you had always been a person who wanted to know the how and why of things.
Yes.
And I was curious if from a young age, if you would have considered yourself a spiritual seeker, or if that was something that developed later in life.
Yes. Well, it would have developed later in life. But when I was able to look back at my childhood, and as a young boy growing up in the rural area of southwest Cork, I was always very curious about life and the world, and about animals and about flowers and trees, and I just seemed to have a kind of natural curiosity, about things and how it worked and where did they come from, and how was this God, how was God involved with all this, and then after educate my education, which didn't last very long, I left school at 14. Uh, I never really got into the school atmosphere at all. I disliked it, and the only ambition I had there was to get out of it as fast as possible. You know, I found it very difficult to learn, and yet somewhere within me, I knew I wasn't stupid, but if there was pressure of any kind put on me, I seemed to kind of go blank, you know, and retreat into myself and be forced back into myself, And I also know, for some time now, looking back at that childhood and things, that I was always very emotionally sensitive. You in those days, of course, and at those times, as a young boy, I didn't have words for the feelings at all. You know, but, I know that I'm very emotionally sensitive, and I'm still like that today. But at least now I know what it is, and I can make friends with it, and it's okay, you know. Um, but the spiritual stuff that came sometime later.
And is that something that I believe I heard you mention in another video that you had two friends, two local friends, and it sounded like they were sort of mentors for you at a tough period of time. Would
Yeah,
that mark the beginning of your search?
that's it, Sean. Exactly. Um, I suffered from the illness of alcoholism, and um, I was hospitalized in a psychiatric unit, and I didn't know at that time that alcoholism was an illness at all, But, um, the two people you mentioned, they came into my life at about that time, and helped me to get sober, and thankfully to stay sober. And one of these people was a man called Jim, and to his friends, he was known as Spiritual Jim. He was very quiet, easygoing, didn't say very much. But the things he did say, Sean, I thought were very strange, you know. This wasn't the kind of language that I had ever heard before. And it was the way he was in himself also, He had a very kind of quiet, peaceful way about him, and everything happened very slowly in Jim's life, I used to say, that if Jim was to start walking from his home west to the Atlantic, coastal erosion would have traveled the other half to meet him by the time he got halfway, you know. But I found myself really liking Jim, and then some days, I was married with two young children. I had a little business in the town, a home to keep, which I was doing up, and I had plenty of things to do, more things I could do than I would have time to do. And then I would find myself driving out to Jim's house, maybe 25 miles away or so. And I often wondered, why am I going out here? I have plenty to do at home, this would be on my day off, weekends or whatever. And I know now that there was something about him that was attracting something in me that I wasn't conscious of at that time. I really wasn't. And um, then he gave me he Jim didn't speak very much, and but he gave me a book, and it was The Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley. And in that book, the Huxley speaks and draws comparisons between the mystics of the East and the Christian mystics, and it's a good commentary by Aldous Huxley. And I found this very interesting, really interesting. And I had never read these kind of books before. No, the only knowledge I had about that was, through the Christian story and my Catholicism as a youth, which I had kind of walked away from when I was about 15 or something like that. Not that there was anything wrong with that at all, but it wasn't my personality, to rebel and to walk away and this kind of stuff. So then he also had a friend who lived in London, Khan, and when he came to Ireland on holidays about this time also, Jim introduced me to him. And now I didn't know these things until later, but Jim had been enlightened by a profound spiritual experience. In fact, he even said it, that there was no words could hold it or describe it, you know. And Khan had become enlightened through self-inquiry. And about that time, Khan also gave me some books, and it was Zen Buddhism. And I had known nothing about Buddhism whatsoever. And these were three thick books he gave me. I think it was Suzuki that had doing the translation into English. But I read the three, you know. I didn't know what it was about, or what I was reading, but I read them, so there was a hunger in me. And then I got a book from who I don't know, but it was The First and Last Freedom by Krishnamurti. And this really blew me away completely. This thing of questioning and finding out, question, and finding out. Like with Krishnamurti, when you think he's going to give you an answer, he just gives you another question. Now that was his style. I had never read anything like that before. And I fell in love with that style of inquiry. It seems like I was ideally suited to it, at that time. And also, just to regress a little bit, Sean, at the end of my alcoholism, when my body wasn't able to process alcohol anymore, it was rejecting it violently. And so then I was left with myself and this insanity in my mind, and I wasn't able to walk. Towards the end, I couldn't drive my car, this kind of thing, and eventually, I reached a stage where I had total ego deflation at death. You know. Later, I read about this now and found out about it. And the feeling was like a feeling of being no person. I felt I was no person. No, like if my wife asked me, would I have a cup of tea? I'd say, I don't know. No, I couldn't say yes, which seems the simplest thing. And that was the turning point really in my life, because then I was available to outside help, the doctor and the psychiatrist, and so I suppose that that happening in itself provided a kind of a platform for all this also that was to follow later. You know. And I suppose there was some spiritual experience, or what I called spiritual experience at that time. Like one morning, I called to Jim's house, maybe at about 11 o'clock. And Jim, welcomed me and he made some tea. He was always making tea. He'd drink tea all day long. And he said it was winter time. He sat at one side of the fireplace and I sat at the other side of the fireplace. And I don't know what we were speaking about, but then I had this kind of feeling that if he was speaking to me, I couldn't hear it. And if I was speaking to him, I couldn't hear it either. Very strange, strange feeling, but not a disturbed feeling. And the other recollection I have of that incident then was I said to Jim, will we go into the nearest town to have some lunch? And Jim said, lunch? He said, now it's 8 o'clock. And I don't know what happened to that day. No? It was like as if time had collapsed, in the nature of duration, that it had just collapsed. But I had this most tremendous feeling of well-being. I had never felt like that in my life. It was like I was floating, everything was beautiful and I just felt so good, and everything was in its proper place and I didn't have any problems or I didn't feel troubled by things. And, you know, it was so strong that sometimes when I would come from work in the evening and have the evening meal with Marion, my wife, and the two children, then I would find myself going down to the seaside, and laying on the rocks. It was winter time and laying on the rocks with a big coat just staring up at the sky. It was like as if I didn't want anything to disturb this feeling, the business of the day, that if I went to this quiet place, I'd fall into that feeling again, And so that had a big effect on me. Then I was beginning to feel that there was another kind of life or another way of being in life. And so I was really I was reading morning, noon, and night. Reading when I woke up in the morning, reading at my breakfast, reading at lunchtime, during my hour lunch break at work. I'd have the book with me in the restaurant up on the table. I was doing more reading than eating. And it, what it was like, Sean, it was like having a great hunger, a tremendous hunger. And every now and again it would be satisfied momentarily, and then the hunger would arise again, And I was really in love with that process. It had its kind of difficult periods also. But about that time too, I knew I had known Jim and Khan for about a year and a half to 2 years at that time. And then one day, Jim told me that he had been diagnosed with cancer and, and had to be hospitalized. I was really devastated with this news. I was really devastated. So after work each evening, I would go to visit him in the hospital. And he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And he wasn't in the slightest upset about it. He wasn't saying why me or anything like that. He just seemed to be the usual Jim. And he'd be more concerned about the people, the man next to him in the bed and getting him the paper and all this thing. And then one day, um, I called to see him in the evening, and he said, I lost my last fear today. And I said, Jim, I didn't know you had any fears. Oh, I had. He said, today the surgeon told me that I also have bone cancer and that 3 months at the most he had to live. And he said, my fear was that the lady in the social service office would put me out working in the road. And he said, when the surgeon gave him that news, he said, I lost my last fear today. And this was Jim's way. And he and Khan also, they had this little thing going on between them, this joke. Khan was a great rogue. He was very authoritative and would hit you direct with everything right in the face, what he would be saying. And so had their little thing that Jim would say, well, Khan, I'll return to the source before you. And Khan would say, no, you won't, Jim, I'll be home first. And so at that time, when he was in the hospital, he said to me, Khan, call me today from London. And he told him about his diagnosis and about the amount of time he felt he had to live. And he said to Khan, I'm afraid, Khan, I've beaten you to the draw. So at that time, then Jim went back to London to be looked after by a friend of his. And I went back with him for a week, and then I visited at other times. And one evening we were together in North London, and Khan was saying to Jim, Khan was very upset. He couldn't accept this at all about Jim, his closest friend. And he said, Jim, I won't be here in this world when you're gone. And about 3 weeks after that, I was back in Ireland, and Khan had died walking across the lawn of his house. When I heard that, I was completely destroyed. And I went back to London to see Jim, and Jim was very frail. And I remember holding him in my arms to say goodbye, and I knew I wouldn't see him anymore. It was a tough time. Two of them gone within about a year and a half of my meeting them. And now I was left with these carrier bags of books, and on my own, if you like. It kind of symbolized in a way, this this kind of thing in choir because it's a long walk, And sometimes, like, I can see that meeting Jim coming into my life, Kant coming into my life, these books coming into my life, getting sober, and this inquiry, self-inquiry, or self-realization. There's very much of an aloneness about it. At times I found it very hard, and I would speak to some people, and they didn't know what I was speaking about really. It wasn't of their interest. They might have their church and their religion. Now that was lovely, So it was a very alone. There was a great aloneness about it, but of course that's the way it had to be. So then I went on from there, reading and inquiring and meditating and that kind of thing.
And were you, in terms of the type of meditation that you were doing or self-inquiry that you were doing, were you using the books as a guide, or had your friends given you some tools to use?
No, yes, it would be mostly the books, but also I'd find myself meditating upon these things that I had read, and trying to figure out what it meant, what did this mean, and again, this kind of suited my personality, um, and one thing that Khan had said to me, he said, you must be very careful upon this path now of self-inquiry if you're interested. He said, if you're interested in the books I have given you, very good. If you're not, he said, throw them away from you. They're of no use to you. But if this is what you want, he said, be very careful not to get sidetracked, into different organizations or into different kind of self-help stuff. Or there's so many areas, he said, you can find yourself going off in. So be careful. Stay with the books you have and stay with your self-inquiry, and all will be well. So also what Khan had given me was I Am That by Nisargadatta, and this was unbelievable altogether. Now I was really in heaven with this book. I loved his style, his directness, his no nonsense, his kind of great simplicity about it, and the kind of history of the man himself and the way he was in himself, and also I suppose at that time I also got the Dear Joa by the Ramana Maharishi book, and another book I got from a friend who I had introduced to this kind of thing also. And he got a book called Pointers from Nisargadatta, and it was Ramesh Beleska. But I'm not sure now about my pronunciations, but I can only pronounce them the way I can, Pointers from Nisargadatta. I suppose I had been on this inquiry maybe 3 years or 4 at the time, 4 or 5 years. And one Sunday, my wife was working, and I was sitting in the sitting room, and the 2 children were doing their homework or playing with something. And I was reading this book, Pointers from Nisargadatta. And to this day, I have no idea exactly what chapter or what lines I was reading. But it's like an instant. I knew beyond any doubt and without any question whatsoever that there was no such thing as an independent individual entity person called Pat, you know. And I felt these tears, you know, and welling up inside me, like it. I wasn't jumping around with happiness or this, you know, but there was a kind of a tremendous relief about it, you know. This was a big happening for me at that time, Sean.
I know that at some point you've talked about meeting John Moriarty. Uh, is this before that happened, or what's the
Um,
time frame?
no, this was after meeting John Moriarty, and it was after, in the year after Jim and Con had shed their bodies, and I had gone through a few depressions at that stage, and was feeling very sorry for myself and trying to read. And then one day I came from work, and Marion said to me, my wife, there's a program on the television, and there's a guy on the cover of the TV guide. I think you might be interested. And this was John Moriarty, who I had never heard of before. And so I traveled to see him up the northwest coast of Ireland, and we became great friends. And at that time, he was a great help to me. You know, John just to have that friendship, that, and he had been through his own rocky road of inquiry too, you know, and had walked away from a very successful academic life, you know, to come back and live in Ireland. He had worked in Canada in some university there. And that was Jim, or John Moriarty was a big help to me at that time. You know, and I also then, he had some books published, and um, but when we would go, we'd be usually speaking just to be in each other's company. And I would speak about football, we'd speak about just general affairs in the world, you know. And but I always came away refreshed, you know, from John. Yeah. And so, in that sense, you know, Sean, um, like the things that we need kind of in life somehow will come our way. Maybe not the things I want, you know, but I have learned that there's a flow to life, you know, and 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 this flow is to tap into it, or to be one with it, is a kind of a heartfelt. It's not head business; it's more heart business. And this realization brought about in me a tremendous relaxation, and freed me of a lot of worry and anxiety about the world and about family and about myself. You know, that everything that happens is the cause of everything that happens. You know, that that what I call my life was not really my life. I was only the experience of it, the experiencer of it. You know, and if I just stay still and draw an easy breath, you know, and go with the flow of life, you know, and let the flow take me along. You know, not be fighting or trying to swim against it. If I have to pull and push with life, you know, that's me getting in the way of life. Kind of. And so you know, there was a lot of these kind of um, awakenings came along the journey, you know.
Do you think, I know the idea of the flow of life is very appealing to people. I'm curious if you mentioned how you had a couple of down periods of depression before you met John Moriarty. Do you think that those down periods are a part of that flow, or does flow mean that we're always feeling good and feeling our purpose, feeling like we're headed in the right direction?
No, um, like this flow to life, and by this flow to life, I don't mean something that's preordained, because I feel that's ridiculous, because that would suggest that there's such a thing as time, as in past, present, and future. No, something is decided somewhere in the past and to happen in the future or whatever. So, um, but when I do talk, Sean, and for many years now, I feel that this path of inquiry, it's very important to bring our humanity along with it, to, to try and recognize the beauty and the burden of our humanity, you know, because there's nothing outside of the divine, you know, all is within, you know, there is nothing outside it, you know. Um, so that that flow to life will also include my sorrows and my burdens, you know. And sometimes in the burden in life, we have to carry a heavy cross, and that can be tough and that can be sad, you know. Like, my feeling is that enlightenment or realization is not something for a person. That's for the person. It's it's the idea of, it's from the person, you know, because who is this important person, Pat, that's enlightened or that's looking for enlightenment? Because so when I ask that question and inquire into that, well, then absolutely speaking, there's no such thing as a separate entity person called Pat. So how can a non-existent entity absolutely be enlightened relatively or absolutely, you know? So certainly life has had its way with me, you know. Even some years ago there now in the not too distant past, I had suffered again from depression and anxiety, you know. But it was a strange feeling, like 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 a lot of the feelings, like of doing the simplest things on a daily basis, you know. I'd find myself feeling the feelings, and I'd find myself doing the doings of the things. But somehow, somehow I seem to be absent from it at the same time. It's different to my philosophy of life in my earlier years, you know, and even in the earlier years of the inquiry also, you know, that it's like as if I'm watching myself as an actor on a stage, you know, on the stage of life, and but um, but there's no such thing really as floating away through life, you know, or being unconcerned by the hurts and the wounds of life and the feelings, you know. Um, Surely, you know, it would be a very sad situation if one denied one's humanity, you know, in all its form. You know, it's very important for me to be compassionate towards Pat the person also, with all my faults, with all that's nice about me, and all that may be troublesome about me. You know, that I invite all that to come and sit by my table also. And for me, that's not in any way outside of uh, self-inquiry, or what's called enlightenment, or realization. You know? It's all part, but this part kind of came a little bit later, Sean. You know, um, I also then started some, I don't know how many years ago, because what we're speaking about now commenced about 30 years ago, you know. And so somewhere along the line, then after some years, I got very interested in psychology, and very fond of Carl Jung and reading Carl Jung, you know. So it's like as if the search was broadening out, and then a wondering about our humanity, you know, and about the person, you know, and what the person is, and where did it come from, and how it's involved with the world, you know, or finds itself involved with the world. So I think that brought about in me a deeper understanding of Pat the person also. You know? That this inner critic, you know, the theater in the mind that has this inner critic and can be sometimes more critical of Pat the person than of other people, you know. This doesn't have the hold on me at all that it once did. You know? So it's for me it's been a very broad inquiry. You know, I also was very interested in theoretical physics to try and come at the inquiry from another angle of what matter is, you know, what life is, what matter in particular. And then sometime after that, I became very interested in quantum physics, you know. And so I suppose I have a great love for all of that, you know, and for all aspects of life. And, you know, um, sometimes we read about the ego, and we hear people saying, you know, well, the ego must be deflated, and, you know, we should get rid of the ego, kind of. And, you know, well, if you try to get rid of the ego, like the ego will say, okay, come on, let's get rid of the ego. You know, it'll hunt with the hare, run with the hare and hunt the hounds, you know. Um, so I feel, you know, there shouldn't be any violence, you know, violence of thought or violence of action towards oneself, towards one's body, you know, or putting the body through some kind of rituals or whatever. I think it's a great violence, because what has the body done to anybody? You know, it's innocent and has done no wrong, you know. And you know, trying to change Pat the person, and that if I change now, then I'll be better later. In a sense, all this is a violence, you know. Of course, changes happen and come their way in their own time, but it's it's quite easy to be unconsciously violent, you know. And we look out and see a lot of the violence, what we class as violence in the outside world, and neglect or be unaware of the violence within ourselves and with our own thinking and attitude.
When you say you've mentioned self-inquiry several times, um, how if someone came to you and said, "Hey, what is this self-inquiry stuff that you're talking about? Do you have a definition of it, or is that too big of a question?"
Well, not really, because like self-inquiry would be first about finding out what I am, you know? But it's really more about finding out what I'm not, you know? Like this is where Isaac Gadet in his book I Am That was a great revelation for me, you know, because he would always say like inquire, find out, you know, you find out. He wouldn't give easy answers or handy answers that we're always looking for, you know, to these questions in life. And so it's about inquiring into, you know, was I born? You know, and what is it that was born? And where did it come from? And what will happen when this body dies and the person I take myself to be dies? Because another kind of cross I had to bear all my young life and from a young child was the fear of death. It was my constant companion. You know. And when I was about 11 years old, my brother Nicholas died when he was 18. And that had a tremendous effect on me. You know, the whole grief of my parents, you know, and all, you know, they told me later, some years later, that I didn't speak for 2 weeks, you know. So this fear of death. So in another way, this was driving me also, you know, to find an answer to these things, you know. And so that's what I would say about self-inquiry, that it's mostly about finding out about things we're not, about the concepts and the beliefs and the feelings that we get involved with to kind of shelter and house us and keep us a bit safe and secure psychologically, you know. Are these things true? You know? Are these things really true? Because I always had a great trouble with believing in something that I couldn't understand. Um, so and inquire into things like for instance, one of the most difficult periods I was going through was this thing about time, you know, and about the no time, and what was time, you know, and what was eternity, you know, and this had been bothering me greatly for a long time, and it was like a puzzle that it seemed to me there was no answer to. So one weekend I went camping, and I went camping on an island off the shore. And I think I took 2 or 3 books with me in a little bag and some food and stuff. And I was reading a book, and I have no idea what book it was now. And it was there on that island, sitting right down on the edge of this island on the edge of the wild Atlantic Ocean, you know. And again, it happened just like that. How there was an understanding of there was like there's an understanding that's not of the thinking process. You know? There's an understanding. There's an understanding uh, that's not dependent on any words or any philosophy or any thinking process. You know? And it doesn't depend on thought for the understanding. Like it's understood by the totality of intelligence or by our intuitive intelligence. which we usually don't in our world, and in our journey through life give much attention to. But the intuitive intelligence is the greater part of intelligence. It's intelligence at large, awareness at large, the thinking thought, and the thinking process is only an aspect of the totality of consciousness, or this awareness, this kind of knowing. But it seemed to me to be very quickly that another moment, I completely understood how there was no such thing as time, as in past, present, and future. Absolutely nothing, that anything that ever happened always happened now. Anytime I ever done anything, I done it in the now. It was always now when I done it. And that eternity was not a long time. It was in fact no time at all. And the now is eternity. And it's not that I have eternal life, but I am eternal life. There's not somebody who has life. I could say, if you want to speak relatively, that it's life who has me. But that was really a wonderful thing. That it's like as if self-inquiry is like having a bad second-hand car, Sean, that sometimes gives trouble starting, and sometimes you have to give help to give it a push, and it starts and it doesn't start and it starts. It's a bit like that. At least this is how it was in my case, And then there was also a nice kind of period that came along, and I think it was a continuation of the times of my childhood. We lived in a little cottage, and we had a little bit of land, and we had goats and things when I was a young boy. And there was a beautiful hillside with an old stone fort, on top, a big stone fort, and we used to bring the goats. Sorry, we had to bring the goats in there to milk the goats, And this is the place I kind of imagine myself as having most of these questions and looking around, It was a lovely place to be because you feel you are up from the world and away from the world, And so then this seemed to come up again, my inquiry about nature and about the natural world, And that I think it was Alan Watts who really triggered it off when he said, we don't come into this world, we come out of it. And that was a great kind of another avenue, that this body that I used to call me, take to be me. This body is as much a part of nature, of the natural world, as is a tree or a flower or a plant. It the like the food my parents consumed, came out of the natural world, the rain, the wind, the sun, the soil, the chemicals in the earth. And when I was conceived, like the fluids of my parents that came together for this conception was the kind of essence of the seed of the food that they had eaten. And then 9 months later, this body comes. So we don't come into the world, we come out of it, like out of the natural world. These are food bodies, like they're as much we're as much entwined with nature as any other aspect of the natural world. And sadly, we sometimes feel as of ourselves as standing outside and away from looking at something other than self. This whole business of space and the me and the nothing, which is another story. I don't know if you like me to speak about that or not, Sean. I seem to be speaking too much.
No, I just hope that people are picking up on the the feeling of what really for me resonates when you talk about things like intuitive intelligence. There's a very specific feeling that is something in addition to the words that you're putting on it. And I get what you're saying, and I hope that that's being communicated for others because that's incredibly important.
I suppose it 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 brings about a new way of being in the world, what we call the world, because it brings a kind of an ease about it, a kind of an all rightness about everything, you know, and and that I don't have to struggle and strive about life, really, you know, uh, and that the things I will need to know, need to understand, that they will come if they're needed, that this intuitive intelligence is what I am. Consciousness, awareness, intuitive intelligence, these are all different names, different symbols for the same oneness of all things, which is my true nature. They're just different names and used in different ways. To explain it another way, it's like the little things I was speaking about earlier, Sean, and the things that happen, like the realization of time and about you know suddenly realizing that there was no such thing as a separate entity with free will and all that stuff called pet. Um, I've lost my train of thought now again. If I wander off at all, I get carried away, lost in life. But so these all come out of the intuition, you know, and 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 what's important is that intuition is not an aspect of consciousness. There isn't the intuition and then the intellect, as in the thinking process, and then consciousness at large. It's all the one consciousness. It's the one totality, but it's not always that it breaks through the you know the thinking process and the because we're kind of programmed, if you like, we're kind of programmed to be reactionary mechanisms rather than responding to things. And so intuition, it normally gets crowded out by the thinking process, you know, by the theater in the mind and the thoughts that go on and the thoughts that bring up the idea of me being a person and all this kind of thing. So, but I have found that if if I am if I give it a chance, and be quiet and not to rush, that this intuitive will come more and more to the fore, you know, uh, and is really our greatest friend, and you know, it will always see us through and it will always see us right. You know, it's closer to us than our own breathing. You know, it's our it's the greatest gift. That even relatively speaking, we could be given. You know, and what it does ask of me, Sean, is that I live vulnerably. in the best way that I'm able. Because to live vulnerably is to live freely. But we we don't want to feel vulnerable, like, because this me feeling, the ego uh, is always a need. Because there's no such thing as an ego. It's only a feeling. You know, when the young child, the innocent infant, is in completeness and doesn't need anything, because there's no me as yet after arriving through language and through words and symbols. And so this ego, this me, demands of us security, you know, of we want the future to be safe. We want to know that it will be okay. We want, um, and so the the me feeling of the ego never finds any place to lay its head. There's the old thing from the biblical thing: the Son of Man will find no place to rest his head or to lay his head. You know, because the man I take to be myself is just a thought, an ego, a me feeling. So it's always seeking security and seeking safeness and demanding that of life, and that draws me onward, struggling in life and to fight in life and demanding security. Fear of the unknown. You know, which is probably one of the most ridiculous things. To have a fear of the unknown, because under any circumstances whatsoever can I fear what I do not know. It is absolutely impossible. What we actually fear is the loss of the known. We fear the loss of the already experienced. You know? And this is also kind of why we look back at the good old days, and we romance about the good old days, and things. And because the me feeling or ego can only exist upon the already known, the already experienced, and it kind of places itself at the center of, as the thinker of the thought, as the doer of the deeds and the actions, you know. But supposing I'm able to live vulnerably, you know, supposing it's a bit like somebody who had a book one time called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, you know. So to live vulnerably is to live freely also. And to live vulnerably is to live by this kind of intuitive intelligence, to live from the heart instead of the head. Self-inquiry is 90% heart business, and 10% head business. And now I'm not being demeaning against thoughts, the thinking process of the psyche in any way, because that would also be a violence. But living vulnerably is me falling in with the flow of life, with the intuitive intelligence, with not needing to know. I don't have to strive. I don't have to hurry and after life, and drive myself crazy about all these things. Because all these are crosses that are not ours to bear. One of the ways um, to explain it is, like, sometimes I tell stories, and there's a man driving along the roadside with a donkey and calf, and there's somebody walking along the roadside, so he stops and asks him if he wants a lift into the town, and he said, yes, I'd be very happy. And he had a bag on his back, and he sat into the donkey calf, and the donkey proceeded, and they were speaking about different things, and the owner of the donkey and cart noticed the man was still carrying the bag on his back. And he said, why don't you let down the bag there, And he said, well, he said, I wouldn't like to put all the weight on the donkey, you know. And we're like this, you know, we carry a load that's not ours to carry. You know? And we sometimes carry a heavy cross that's not ours to carry. And in lots of, you know, that this cross, like, is often of our own making and of our own you know, not really being open to life and not really wanting to understand life. No, it all happens in innocence. Like there's no criticism due to anybody. No, there's no criticism whatsoever due. You know, for our humanity or any aspect of our humanity. You know, but we are very often burdened greatly uh, by, and it's not our burden to carry. No, it's mostly brought about by the thinking process, by our concepts, attitudes, the attitudes of the society we might be living in. This is why often, you know, somebody once said, um, and I forget who now, like that if you're interested in this kind of aspect, this is probably something that happened a long time ago. Maybe they wouldn't be using the words like self-inquiry or whatever that time. Now to be mysticism, and that if this is going to be the path you walk, you know, you'll be lonely often, you know, and you will be lonely often, you know, and and not just lonely, but there's also an aloneness about it, you know, that like the concepts and beliefs that are generally held in society. Like if you're not, if you're not, if you no longer find yourself within all that, but standing outside and questioning it all, you know, you're going to be lonely because there's not many people around you that are going to be standing where you stand. You know? So there is a certain aloneness about it, you know. But if I'm trying as best I'm able to live vulnerably, then the conflict goes out of it, you know. Because a lot of the pain I have found in life comes out of conflicts within myself, you know. Like if I'm depressed, and I don't speak lightly about these things now or philosophizing about them at all, you know. But like if I'm depressed and I don't accept, or if I refuse to accept or acknowledge that I'm depressed, you know, then I have two problems. You know. I have the depression and I have the conflict with not being willing to try and accept the depression. You know, now there's two, and the conflict can be more painful than the depression, you know. And but I'm not speaking like about these in some kind of a philosophical manner at all. And I can only um, have these ways of looking at things if I'm able to do it. And we often say and throw around the saying like we must accept, or I need to accept, or they're not accepting. But really, if there's a full acceptance, there is no problem. No? So there's nothing to try for. So all I can do is to try and accept, even to be willing to try and accept. Now I'm on the road towards dealing with the situation, you know, and not being in conflict.
I come from a background, I'll say a spiritual background of looking for tools and techniques. And for example, when you talked about intuitive intelligence, a part of my path was trying to improve my intuition and trying to do experiments that would improve the intuition. Things like purposely being in nature, going out and being in nature. And, I can remember doing things which seemed silly at the time, but hugging a tree, trying to see if I felt anything when I was close to this tree. I get the sense from you that the heart, the intuitive intelligence was something that was just more natural for you, or something that you didn't strive so much to find this intuitive intelligence, that it just kind of arose. Is that true, or was there a struggle on your part to connect with that intuitive intelligence?
I don't know, Sean, if there was a struggle as such. Um, I think once the intuitive intelligence, you know, has an opportunity to come through, then it kind of does the rest itself as such. All that it's demanding of me is not to put up obstacles in its way, you know, and that's usually by you see, we're addicted to thinking. Um, we're addicted to thinking, and we think that it is we who are thinking the thoughts, which is absolutely ridiculous, you know, because of all the thousands and thousands of thoughts that fly through consciousness each day. It would be impossible to think the thoughts, you know, and there's no such thing. Thoughts think themselves, you know. Usually, one thought coming into being in association with the last thought. If I'm thinking something sad thought, then that'll bring another sad thought, another sad thought, and so on. This was also an aspect that was very important for me when it happened. This freedom from the idea that I would think of the thought. And of course, one of the ways that opens up is because now I'm looking at the thoughts, like I would watch a passing car. It's none of my business, the passing car. I'm just looking at it passing. So the same with thoughts. This is at times now when it doesn't overpower me, because the teeth of the mind has its way with me very often. So then you see there's a little distance as it was opens up, and this is half business now. Again, this is half business, and half business is like the half of our beingness. So when we say we're speaking from the half, we're speaking about the totality of our beingness. We call it the half, but it's actually the totality of our beingness. So now there's a kind of a passageway for this intuition and intuitive intelligence to come more to the fore. All that's happening is some of the obstacles and obstructions have been moved aside, with the realization I'm not thinking of the thoughts. Therefore, that my thinking about self-inquiry and my struggles with things, yes, thought plays a part. But like as John Moriarty said, the mind is not the window to the soul, it's the blind. So when the mind is asked to step aside, then soul business or half business, and that's what intuition is, and not intuitive intelligence is. It's half business because it belongs to the center of our beingness. It's part of our homeland. It's part, of our true nature of where we reside. Uh, and so it's not No, it's not something to get anew. Anything along the path of self-inquiry, Sean, is not something we get anew. Because everything we get anew will be taken away from us eventually. You anything, but so all of this realization, intuitiveness, this is all part of my true nature, of my ancient nature. Well, even that presupposes that there's time, but it's not something that's coming in new. All that's been happening is that the obstacles, like if I'm sitting in a room of a house and it's dark and it's dull, um, there's no point in me going outside and trying to get the sun to come in the door and down into the room and push the sun and pull the sun. No, all I have to do is just draw back the blinds, and the sun flows in. So a lot of the aspects of this journey along the way is about removing the obstacles. You know? And these obstacles get removed by various realizations, by the intuitive intelligence along the way.
For a person who struggles with the thinking mind, who say sits down to meditate and is just bombarded by thoughts, it's just they have a noisy mind, let's say. Do you have any suggestions for a person like that, or do they just need to struggle with it and find their own way?
Yeah, when I first started to meditate, I found it very difficult, and I sometimes I'd have to get up and walk away because the teeth in the mind was so strong that you know. And sometimes when I started going back to these quiet places of my childhood, you know, in the beginning I couldn't stay there very long either, because it was too quiet, it was too raw, it was too much of nature for my head to bear. And everybody kind of meditates in their own way. You can only meditate the way you're able to meditate. You know? And it's very much an individualistic thing. And here again, there must be great compassion for oneself, and not trying to get anything. Like if if my mind would only stay quiet, then I could find the peace, and then I'd meditate properly. So if I get something now, later on, it'll be better. Which is to get up on the whole, cut up on the whole thing of time, you know, which is again being carried away in another illusion, you know. But if I remain as if I watch the thinking process, what they call remaining as the witness. If the dog is barking, if somebody's hooting a cat outside, then I just observe all that also. You know? If thoughts are passing, they are observed also. Well, in meditation, there's nothing wrong whatsoever. You know? And because we speak generally of meditation as time sitting quiet, but life is a meditation. This is only meditation, and sitting is only an introduction to life, or a way of being in what we call life, another way of being. You know? And also that it's just not the thoughts on their own that take us off, because every thought brings up a sensation, a physical sensation in the body. We usually feel it in the solar plexus area. For very troubled and very sad and anxious, sometimes our stomach would get sore, the nerve endings. And so if I watch that sensation, and think of it as like a spark that flies out of an open fire, onto the floor, it has only a momentary existence and it's gone. So if I watch the thoughts, but most of all, watch the body sensation that the thoughts will bring up. And now I'm not reacting to those thoughts. Now I'm responding, and there's worlds of difference. Because a reaction will demand another reaction, and another reaction, whereas the response is of the now, of the moment. No, and it doesn't demand or create another response. No, it arises and sinks into the now, present moment, and that that watching that body sensation and feeling it kind of falling away, then in that way one can break the chain of reacting to the thoughts. One is no longer in conflict with the thoughts. One is just observing the thoughts and watch the feelings that they bring up. Watch in physical, because uh, the physical aspect of meditation is very important also, because it's here. No? It's not just something in the mind, something distant, far away, or not touchable, but one can just feel the physical sensations. And it's mostly to these physical sensations that we react to. We think it's to the thoughts at the thought of the trigger, but usually it's the physical sensations we react to in life. Like, and this meditations can be done in the coffee shop, in the bar, while you're stopped at the traffic lights, sitting in your car, whatever. No, it just takes a few minutes to watch the breath entering the nostrils or the mouth and leaving. This is a good way just to bring attention first, and then to watch the bodily sensations and seeing the thoughts moving away, or slowing down, and not having, not having the same hold on me physically. Because if I'm reacting and then I'm feeling angry, and let's say I could be doing something, Sean, drinking a cup of coffee in the coffee shop, and then the theater in the mind starts, and something sad starts, and then another sad thought comes, and the feelings in the body will start to feel sad, and I start to feel heavy, and then maybe if an angry thought comes, or upset that these people upset me, then another angry. I'm just sitting drinking a cup of coffee. I don't want to be thinking those things at all. And I'm not thinking them either. They're thinking themselves into existence, but I'm reacting to them. Huh? And in reacting to them, I'm claiming them as mine. I'm getting caught up and being taken away by this that is none of my business. Uh-huh. And so it's very easy to get taken away. And you know, this is the wonderful thing about inquiry, that there are so many aspects to all this. And also, Sean, like, it's why I have the very strong feeling that in all of this, all humanity, we must take it right along with us all the time. You know, not to be critical of the self, of blaming myself for what happened in the past, and you know, understanding liberates. Understanding liberates.
It doesn't necessarily liberate in the sense that these mechanisms of the mind, these reactions of the mind, these things still happen. Uh, so liberation doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, I'm no longer this reactionary mechanism that gets aggravated when there's a traffic jam, or gets aggravated when the coffee shop closed early and now I can't get a cup of coffee. Like, those things still happen.
Yes, exactly right. But now, because I'm more aware of these things, I notice them happening, and so I'm not getting caught up with them as much. I notice myself getting irritable with the traffic or with somebody who comes in front of me in a queue or something like that when it's not their turn. And it's not that I have to make an effort to observe. Like, we spoke earlier about the witness. A lot of what we're speaking now would be about the witnessing. But first, there's a witness. I'm the witness to what's happening. And then there's only witnessing without a witness. So it would be true to say that now there's witnessing of these things. And in this witnessing is included Pata person. And this is a wonderful, warm, kind of heartfelt way of being, because all through nature, like, is complete and without any want whatsoever, or without any need. Like we say, like what we call love. What is love? And love is my true nature, like, because there's no want. It feels fulfilled. It feels complete. It feels uplifting. You know, and 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 so when there's witnessing, it's so different from there's someone witnessing. And this idea of this, you see, there's a very important thing here, Sean, is that witnessing and being a witness. Like, okay, someone witnessing something, and there's a witness. I'm confusing myself here, which is nothing new to me. But like remaining as the witness, and then there's only witnessing. You see, witnessing is not something new. It's not another step on from remaining as the witness, because there's only witnessing anyway. The idea that there's someone called Pat witnessing, absolutely speaking, is just not true. Like we can speak in two ways relative to Pat, the person, the body, and the mind, are speaking absolutely. So this witnessing is what happens anyway. Only that through the thinking process and through me taking this body and this person to be all that I am, that I get carried off and think that convinced that I am an independent interior person witnessing what has happened. And so I'm addicted to that and think that, to remain when there's only witnessing, that's something way beyond me altogether. Well, it's not at all. It's because it's my true nature. It's what I am. It's what's happening all the time. A lot of these things we think are far away, and that some people have realized and other people haven't realized, and some people are enlightened and other people, there's no such thing. No? All are enlightened. All are, maybe people may not realize it, of course, and are biding their time in the body-mind complex, and that's fair enough. No, there's no blame due there either, because it doesn't matter, because they're enlightened anyway. They are the source anyway, like they are the divine ground. They, we haven't traveled out from our father's house like in the old biblical, we only think we've traveled, like we travel all the time, but we only think we've gone out, but really we're traveling within. we haven't go out at all. Like the paradisal gates are never closed behind us. No? They're closed in front of us because we're still within.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome, John.
I want to stay conscious of our time, even though in the big picture that may all be an illusion.
Yeah.
The irony of checking the clock doesn't escape me right now. Just a couple more questions, and
Yeah.
these might be a little philosophical. Um, but I am curious if you have a sense of a cosmology, if you will, of you mentioned fear of death and wanting to know what death is. From your perspective now, can you say a little bit about what your view is about what happens to Pat the individual at death? For example, do you think there's reincarnation, or that this is part of some evolution of the soul, or do you have any views along those lines, or do you just kind of, as your enlightenment sort of swept all that off the table?
Yes. Well, you see, we inquire and we wonder a lot about what happens after life. You know, is there life after death, or what happens? Would we never ask what happens before life? You know, where did life come from, or what is life? What is this beingness? You know, like we spoke about the wave and the particle earlier on. You know, what is this? What is it that all this stuff comes out of bodies, and you know, where is the life force? What is it in? You know, and so, like, absolutely speaking, there is no such thing as an independent individual called Pat the person that was born and that's going to die. There's absolutely no such thing, no matter how much, how, you know, it only appears that way. And so, and that Pat the person is a convention, it's an idea, you know? Like, which Pat am I? You know? Since I was that young boy we spoke about earlier, since I was a teenager, since I was in my late teens going about my business in the world, and then as a young man and later, and now I'm in the, you know, 71 soon, I'm in the season of the falling leaves, you know. So which identity is mine? There never has been a steady identity, you know, because the me feeling arises with a thought. It's a thought, you know. So which me am I? You know? Even the body, if I look at the body, is constantly changing. You know? It's constantly evolving. You know? And so, which me am I? It's only an idea. It's only a thought that arises upon the shoulders of innocence when the young child is in its completeness, in its paradisal state. You know? The baby, the newborn baby. You know? And it neither knows our nation, our family, our brothers, our sisters, or any of these things have as yet played no part in his life, but it feels complete and perfect and knows it exists. You know? And so then, through language and through, you know, the parents and the brothers and the sisters, the child hears the language, you know, and then because I have grandchildren myself, you know, so I too am involved in all this game, you know, and there's no harm at all. But like, you know, I have one grandson called Joseph and the other grandson called Samuel, and I have two other grandchildren as well, Jessica and Leah, who are out in the world in their business. And so I say, this is Joseph's shirt, no? And this is Joseph's nose, and this is Joseph's ear. So then, for the first time, and very, very slowly and insidiously, the child starts to identify itself with the body. It was oblivious to the body before that, absolutely oblivious to the body. And then what rises up with this is, you know, the me feeling. The me feeling was absent from the equation completely before that. You know? So now this me feeling, you know, this is Joseph or this is Samuel, the name, and the name is me. So this me feeling kind of this shady nothingness like comes into being. And this is where the problem really arises. You know? Here space arises. You know? And space is too only a concept. Because if this is me, then the table is not me. And if this is me, then my mother is not me. And my brother is not me. So this is the birth of duality. You know? Then we're off on the road of duality. You know? And we forget about the glories we have known, the glory of the oneness of all things, like the little infant child was. You know? And so this is all like our fall from grace, or this is our, you know, leaving our father's house, or whatever kind of terminologies one wants to put in it. And so what self-realization is realizing that we have never left, you know? That I still am that innocence. You know? The child is held up in a lot of philosophies and religions, you know, like to become a child into the kingdom of heaven again and all this kind of thing, because it represents the innocence. And that innocence is my true nature, you know, because innocence is love, completeness, wholeness, you know. And now, Sean, I'm out of forgetting your question again, which is nothing new, and maybe which is no harm.
Your answer brings me back to that idea, which others will occasionally speak of, that there's no enlightenment for the individual. That it's not something additive. It's not something that, oh, Pat is enlightened. Well, let me ask it from a slightly different angle. Then, does the idea of a soul mean something to you? It's certainly an ancient idea that a human being has a soul, and obviously religions have been formed around the idea that there's an eternal soul. Do you see a way that that is a reflection of the truth that you have realized, or is it a distortion of that truth, or what is that idea getting at of the soul?
Unfortunately, Sean, we suffer from what Carl Gustav Jung termed the regrettable smallness of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Because the idea of individual soul comes along with the idea that there is an individual, that there's a person, no? But this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I can't be a separate soul and then say I'm the oneness, that's my true nature, the oneness of all things, the totality of intuitive intelligence, that's my nature. This whole idea of any individually, like when I speak of intuitive intelligence, if I were to use the word soul in a different way, it could be about the totality of my true nature, what I truly am. You know? But the word soul brings up a lot of connotations with it of individuality. And like now I remember your question about reincarnation and what happens, at death. Well, I can't, I can't at all go along with that idea of reincarnation because number one, what is to be reincarnated and who is to be reincarnated? No, the body, this material body, which is only in appearance and consciousness anyway. There's no such thing as a solid body or solid matter anywhere. It's all just energy localized in some one form or another. No? So the body is not going to be reincarnated or survive death whatsoever. That a person was never there in the first place, absolutely speaking. It was only there in thought, no? And carrying thought. So what happens at death is that I remain what I have always been, you know, pure awareness, pure bliss. No word can describe it. You can only describe and use words upon what it is not. But there's no word hold. It's beyond all descriptions, you know, and outside any attempt because our words, our words generally either describe or distort something. No, they don't create anything. Like the word tree is not a tree. The word God is not God. No, these are only descriptions that we use. But so it would be so if there was no such thing as an individual called Pat the person that was born in the first place, then who's going to be reborn? No? Absolutely speaking, like it's out of the question. No? And a lot of this comes about also because we're kind of addicted to our given world, our sensorial given world, what we call the real world, no? And we think this is the only solid reality that there is. But there's nothing at all real about it, absolutely speaking. The only sure safe thing is my true nature. No? We're just journeying in a strange land. No? We're only visitors here. We're like we're only psychic visitors here. No? There is another reality that's not available to the senses to see, hear, taste, touch, smell, and the interpretings into the mind. No? But we think if it's not available to our senses, then it's not real. No? But that is not at all the case. The senses only give us a kind of a chosen reality, a limited reality.
Well, Pat, I appreciate your patience with my questions. If if people wanted to get in touch with you, uh, is the website the best way to reach out?
I don't know how active that website is. The best way really to contact me is through Liam. Liam is the man who tries to keep me a little bit organized. Put a bit of shape to me,
Okay, I will. I'll get in touch with Liam, and we'll
Thank you.
see how we can. For example, after listening to this, people might want to talk with you a little further, and
Yeah,
we can
yeah,
figure out a way to that people could get in touch with you if they were interested.
yeah, yeah. That would be great. I appreciate that, Sean, very much. And it's really been lovely speaking to you and to meet you.
It's been
Yeah,
great talking with you as well, and I do want to let people know that you have a book, The
yeah,
Rose and the Stone,
yeah.
and it is available in the U.S. The Kindle version is available. I just checked on Amazon the other day,
Okay,
so
okay,
people can get a hold of that if they're interested as well.
okay. That's great, Sean. Thank you. It's been very nice meeting you, Sean, and very nice to speak with you.
Yeah, it's been great as well, and yeah, maybe we could do a follow up sometime because
why not? Yeah,
like I mentioned, I get a real sense of I don't know, the feeling of your search in the space. It especially struck me. It seemed like you allowed a lot of space in your search for something to arise and give yourself time, and I really appreciate that.
thank you, Sean. And I just want to say, the work that you're doing. Like when I was starting out, I found myself upon this path of this journey. Wow, it would have been wonderful if I had something like the Sean Nevin podcast to tune into and hear speaker. You know, the, there was just nothing. I think the book I Am That by Now is good at. I had to come from Canada to Dublin and then down to West Cork. Now it's so beautiful. Now we're so blessed with this wonderful tech, that we can do what we are doing now, and that people can listen in and maybe in some little way get pulled and pushed along the way in their own little journey, or even just to have heard of this idea of this whole thing at all is a wonderful thing and a great blessing. So you're doing a fantastic job, Sean, and I hope it goes well for you. Keep up the good work.
Well, thanks for that. I appreciate it. Well, good luck to you.
Bye, Sean. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this edition of Journals of Spiritual Discovery. I'm your host, Sean Nevins. For more information about today's guest, as well as more interviews, books, and other resources, go to spiritualteachers.org. That's spiritualteachers.org.